The space station Unity Accord floated above the glowing blue planet of Vorlon Prime. It was the largest diplomatic base ever built between humans and aliens. Inside its shining metal halls, banners from 50 species hung side by side. The air smelled faintly of ozone and spice, the scent of peace, fragile, uncertain, but real. Among the many ambassadors, one name had gained quiet fame: Ethan Cole, the human diplomat. He was not loud or proud. He didn't wear medals, nor did he carry the weight of command. Yet people listened when he spoke. Even aliens with centuries of tradition respected his calm voice and sharp mind. But there was one thing everyone noticed. Ethan always kept his distance from the Vorlon princess, Urala. The Vorlon were tall, elegant beings with silver-blue skin and luminous eyes that shimmered like starlight. Their gestures were graceful, their voices soft and musical. Princess Urala, daughter of Queen Azarinth, was known not just for her beauty but her curiosity about other species. She found humans especially fascinating. Ever since she met Ethan during a peace council, she had tried to speak with him. She asked about Earth, about music, and about human emotions. She invited him to dine in the royal gardens where glowing flowers swayed to unseen wind, but Ethan always declined politely. "Perhaps another time, Your Highness," he would say, bowing with perfect respect before stepping away. At first, Urala thought he was simply busy. Then she began to notice the pattern. He never looked directly into her eyes. He always stood just far enough to keep distance. He was respectful, never rude, but always distant, like a wall she couldn't climb. Her curiosity turned into quiet frustration. "Why does he avoid me?" she asked one of her guards one evening. The guard, a creature with silver armor scales, shrugged. "Perhaps humans fear the Queen's wrath, Princess." "Or perhaps he fears you," Urala laughed softly. "Fear me? I am no warrior." "Ah, but you are the Queen's daughter," the guard replied. "That is power enough." Rumors began to spread across the diplomatic circle. Some said Ethan thought himself too good to associate with aliens. Others whispered that humans didn't understand Vorlon customs. But the truth, as always, was deeper and more human. Ethan Cole stood on the observation deck watching the endless stars outside. The Earth's home sun was a tiny dot in that sea of light. He often came here after long meetings just to think. The reflection of stars glimmered across his face as he thought of the fragile peace they were building. Decades ago, humans and Vorlon had been close to war. Skirmishes, misunderstandings, pride. Now, after years of work, both sides were close to signing the first unified accord. But even with progress, Ethan knew peace was never simple. It was never just words on paper. It was trust earned day by day through honesty and sacrifice. He heard soft footsteps behind him. A gentle voice spoke. "You always stand alone here, human." It was Urala. She stepped beside him, her silver robe catching the station's artificial light. Her eyes glowed faintly as she gazed out into space. Ethan straightened. "Princess," he greeted formally. "I didn't expect company." "Nor did I expect silence," she replied with a small smile. "Every time I try to speak with you, you disappear like mist. Do humans dislike my people so much?" Ethan looked at her, then back to the stars. "It's not dislike," he said softly. "It's respect." She tilted her head, confused. "Respect? For what?" "For boundaries," he said. "And for the distance that keeps peace possible." Her brows furrowed. "I do not understand." "You don't have to," he said with a polite nod. "Not yet." Urala folded her arms, her tone turning firm. "You speak in riddles, human. My mother says humans are honest and straightforward. Yet you hide behind polite words?" Ethan sighed quietly. "If I spoke my mind completely, Princess, I might offend more than enlighten." "Try me," she challenged, her silver eyes glowing brighter. He hesitated. He wanted to explain. But diplomacy demanded silence sometimes because truth, when spoken too soon, could burn like fire. Instead, he bowed slightly. "Forgive me, Your Highness. I mean, no disrespect, but there are things between our kinds that cannot be rushed." She stepped closer, her tone softening. "I only wish to understand you." "I know," he said, his voice gentle. "And that's exactly why I must be careful." Urala studied him for a long moment. His calmness bothered her more than anger would have. He didn't look away out of fear. He looked away out of restraint, as if he was protecting something, not avoiding her. Before she could say more, a chime echoed through the hall. The Queen was summoning her. With a sigh, Urala turned to leave. "You are strange, Ethan Cole," she said softly. "No one has ever refused my invitation before." He smiled faintly. "Then perhaps that makes me human." In the royal chamber aboard the upper ring, Queen Azarenth sat upon her crystal throne. Her eyes were ancient, sharp as the edge of a blade. The Vorlon queen had ruled for centuries, guiding her people through wars, alliances, and countless shifts of power. She had met thousands of diplomats, but none quite like the human who dared to refuse her daughter's attention. When Urala entered, the queen's gaze fell upon her. "You seem troubled, child." Urala bowed her head slightly. "It is about the human envoy, Mother." "Ethan Cole." The queen's tone was calm but curious. "Ah, the quiet one. What of him?" "He avoids me. Always polite, never rude, but distant. It feels intentional." The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "You believe he means disrespect?" "No," Urala said quickly. "I believe he hides something, but I cannot tell what." The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her tone slow and deliberate. "In my experience, when a being hides emotion, it is not from pride, but from pain. Humans are strange, fragile, yet stubborn. Perhaps he carries some wound we do not see." Urala frowned. "Then you will allow me to ask him directly?" The queen's lips curved in a knowing smile. "No, my daughter. I will ask him myself." Later that day, Ethan received a summons from the royal chamber. The guards escorted him through corridors of shimmering glass where the floor itself glowed faintly with energy. When he entered, the queen's presence filled the room like a rising tide. "Human," she said, her voice deep and commanding. "Do you know why you stand before me?" Ethan bowed low. "To answer your questions, Your Majesty." "Indeed." Her gaze was piercing. "You avoid my daughter. You refuse her invitations. My advisors call it disrespect. I call it curiosity. Tell me, why do you avoid her?" Ethan stood still, his heart steady. He could feel the power behind her question, not just as a queen, but as a mother. He took a slow breath. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "I do not avoid her out of fear or pride. I avoid her because she deserves someone who understands the cost of peace." The queen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, surprise, perhaps even intrigue. "And what cost do you speak of, human?" she asked slowly. Ethan met her gaze directly for the first time. "The cost every human learns too late. The weight of choices that cannot be undone." Silence filled the throne room. The queen studied him as if searching for hidden truth in his eyes. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, she said, "You speak as one who has seen loss." Ethan didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. The queen leaned back on her throne, her voice softening just a fraction. "Very well, human diplomat. You have my attention. Tomorrow you will meet me again. You will tell me what you mean by this cost of peace. Do not disappoint me." Ethan bowed low. "I will not, Your Majesty." As he left the throne room, the queen watched him go, her expression unreadable. Urala stood beside her, puzzled but thoughtful. "Mother," she asked quietly, "what do you think of him?" The queen's lips curved faintly. "He is not avoiding you, my daughter. He is protecting you from something even he does not fully understand." That night, alone in his quarters, Ethan stared at a small metal pendant he carried around his neck. It was worn and scratched, the last piece of his old team, the one he had lost years ago. He closed his eyes and whispered softly, "Some truths can wait. Some must." Outside, the stars burned bright and silent, unaware of the fragile peace being built among them. Tomorrow would bring questions and perhaps answers too. The next morning, the Unity Accord station shimmered under the light of Vorlon Prime. Silver ships drifted outside the massive windows like quiet guardians. Inside the grand meeting halls, diplomats from different species prepared for another long day of talks and debates. But one human had only one meeting that mattered, his audience with the Queen. Ethan Cole walked the long glass hallway toward the royal chamber. The polished floor reflected his calm footsteps, though his mind was not calm. The Queen's words from yesterday still echoed in his head. "Tell me what you mean by this cost of peace." He knew what she wanted. The truth. But truth had weight, and some truths were sharp enough to cut peace apart. When Ethan reached the doors, two tall Vorlon guards saluted him with their glowing staffs. The doors slid open soundlessly, revealing the same vast chamber, bright with crystal light. The Queen sat upon her throne, her eyes steady as always. This time, however, there was no audience, no advisors, only her and him. "Welcome again, human," she said. Her voice carried both warmth and command. "I trust you rested well." "I did, Your Majesty," Ethan replied, bowing deeply. "Good," she said, leaning slightly forward. "Now tell me, what is this cost of peace you spoke of yesterday?" "You have my attention, Ethan Cole of Earth." Ethan stood silent for a few seconds, then spoke slowly, carefully. "Peace is not a gift, Your Majesty. It is a burden. It asks for trust between those who once hated each other, and trust," he paused, "always costs something." The Queen's head tilted slightly. "A poetic answer. But I seek understanding, not poetry." Ethan nodded. "Of course. Then I'll speak plainly. Peace means forgiveness. Forgiveness means letting go of what was done to us, and that's never easy. Not for humans. Not for Vorlon." Her eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "You believe my people do not forgive easily?" "I believe no one does," he said. "That's why peace is so fragile." The Queen studied him for a moment, her silver eyes reflecting light like a calm sea. "You speak as if from experience." Ethan hesitated. "I have seen it, yes." "I think you have lived it," she replied softly. "There is pain in your words, human. My daughter saw it too. She said you carry silence like armor." Ethan looked down, unsure how to answer. The Queen rose from her throne and stepped closer. Even standing still, she carried the power of a leader who had commanded armies and built empires. "You avoid my daughter," she said again, more gently this time. "Not from arrogance. Not from fear." "Then tell me, Ethan Cole, why?" He took a slow breath. "Because she looks at me with hope. And I have learned what hope costs." The Queen frowned slightly. "Hope is dangerous?" "Only when it's unearned," Ethan said. "Humans, we don't fall easily into trust. We build it one moment at a time. When someone like your daughter shows kindness, it means something to us. It binds us in ways that can't be undone. I didn't want to pretend to understand her when I don't. That would be dishonest." The Queen was silent. Then she said softly, "You are strange, human. Most would do anything to please a royal, yet you fear a bond that doesn't exist." "I don't fear it," Ethan said. "I respect it." Her gaze softened. "Respect. You speak of that word often. Among my people, respect means obedience. But with you, it means distance." "Because for humans," Ethan said, "respect means protecting what matters, even from ourselves." Far away in her private quarters, Princess Urala paced restlessly. The Queen had ordered her not to attend the private meeting, but curiosity burned within her. She had spent the entire night wondering what the human diplomat would say. She had never met anyone quite like Ethan. Other diplomats treated her like a prize to win, a symbol of alliance. Ethan treated her like a person, calmly, politely, and always with the same distance. And that made her even more curious. She turned toward her communication crystal and called her friend, Terran, a Vorlon scholar who studied human culture. "Terran, why do you think the human avoids me?" Terran chuckled softly through the holographic link. "Humans are strange, Princess. Their emotions run deep. They hide their feelings because they fear breaking something they value." Urala frowned. "But I am only trying to know him better." "And that may be the problem," Terran said wisely. "Humans don't open easily. When they care deeply. Perhaps he fears that once you understand him, you will never see him the same way again." Urala sighed. "He fears me, then?" "No," Terran said. "He fears what you might mean to him." Her heart gave a small, confused flutter. "I don't understand," Terran smiled. "You will. Humans are patient, but when they finally trust you, they give everything, and that frightens even them." Back in the throne room, the conversation between Ethan and the Queen continued quietly. The air felt charged, but calm. The Queen asked, "Tell me, Ethan Cole, how do humans see the Vorlon?" Ethan considered the question carefully. "We see strength, grace, discipline, but also pride. Pride can be both a shield and a wall." The Queen's expression hardened slightly. "And what of humanity? How do you see yourselves?" He smiled faintly. "Flawed, fragile, emotional. But we never stop trying even when we fail. That's what makes us dangerous to those who underestimate us." The Queen's lips curved slightly. "You believe your people dangerous?" "In a way," Ethan said quietly. "We fight not for glory but for meaning. Every loss teaches us. Every scar becomes memory. Humans are shaped by what hurts us, and that makes us unpredictable." The Queen's gaze softened again. Perhaps that is why my daughter admires your kind. She says humans feel more than any species she has met. Ethan looked away. Feeling is both gift and curse, Your Majesty. Yet it is what makes you human, she said. Yes, Ethan agreed softly. And what makes peace possible? The Queen was silent again for a long time. Finally, she said, You are honest, Ethan Cole, and honesty is rare among diplomats. You will remain at my court until the peace summit concludes. I wish to learn more about your people and about you. Ethan bowed. As you command, Your Majesty. Do not mistake this for an order, she added gently. Consider it an invitation. My daughter will accompany you tomorrow. Perhaps it is time you stopped running from her questions. Ethan looked up sharply. Your Majesty, she raised a hand. Enough, you claim to respect my daughter. Then show it. Let her understand the cost you speak of. He hesitated, then bowed again. As you wish. That evening, the station's corridors glowed a soft amber as the artificial day ended. Yrella waited near the gardens, surrounded by glowing trees whose leaves shimmered like crystal. When Ethan arrived, she smiled warmly but with quiet determination. So, she said, my mother commanded you to spend time with me? Commanded isn't the word she used, Ethan said carefully. Invited, then, she corrected with a teasing grin. Come, walk with me. He nodded, and they walked among the glowing trees. The air was cool, and small floating lights drifted between branches like fireflies. Do you know why I like humans? Yrella asked suddenly. I can guess, Ethan said. She laughed softly. Then guess. You find us unpredictable, he said. We confuse you, she nodded. Yes, your kind is so alive. You feel everything so strongly. Anger, joy, sorrow. You burn so bright even though your lives are so short. Ethan smiled faintly. That's why we try so hard to make every short life count. Her expression softened. And yet you avoid me. Why, Ethan Cole? What makes you so distant? He looked at her for a long moment, his expression calm but sad. Because once you truly understand a human, princess, it changes you. And I don't want to change you before you're ready. She frowned. You think I am weak? No, he said quietly. I think you are kind. And kindness deserves honesty. Her eyes searched his. Then be honest with me, he looked away. Honesty can hurt. Then let it hurt, she said firmly. At least it will be real. For the first time, Ethan met her gaze fully. The reflection of stars and glowing trees shimmered in his eyes. The truth is, I've seen what happens when peace fails. When people try to bridge what they don't understand. It ends in loss, and I can't bear to repeat that mistake. Yrella's voice softened. You speak like a man who carries ghosts. Maybe I do, he said simply. Before she could ask more, a sharp chime came from Ethan's communicator. The message was urgent, something about strange energy readings near the conference sector. His calm expression shifted to concern. He looked at her. I have to go. Ethan, wait, she began, but he was already moving. As he disappeared down the corridor, Yrella stood in the quiet garden, watching the light fade around her. For the first time, she understood that the human diplomat wasn't just avoiding her. He was protecting something far greater, perhaps even her. And somewhere deep in her heart, curiosity began to turn into respect. The soft hum of the Unity Accord filled the corridors as Ethan Cole walked quickly toward the command sector. The alert message from his communicator still echoed in his mind. Unstable energy readings detected near the conference wing. He arrived at the security post where human and Vorloon guards worked side by side. The air was tense. Holographic displays flickered with strange symbols. A Vorloon officer turned as he entered. Ambassador Cole, she said, bowing slightly. We detected an energy pulse from one of the lower chambers. It might be a system error, but the pattern doesn't match anything in our database. Ethan studied the display carefully. The readings looked familiar, too familiar. His stomach tightened as old memories stirred. Lock down this section, he ordered. No one enters or leaves without my permission. The Vorloon officer blinked. Sir, with respect, that order must come from... Then get it from the Queen, Ethan said firmly. Now. Something in his voice made the guards obey without question. He stood still for a long moment, staring at the screen. The pulse pattern was identical to the one he had seen years ago, during the Halvaron incident. That name still haunted him. Hours later, Ethan stood outside his quarters staring at a small metal pendant in his hand. It was round, dull, and old. The edges were worn smooth, but the engraving was still visible. Halvoran Unit 12. It had belonged to one of his teammates who never made it home. He closed his fist around it, remembering the screams, the smoke, and the impossible choice he had made. He had saved thousands of alien infants, but lost his own team in the process. To many, he was a hero. To himself, he was a man who had failed those who trusted him most. He placed the pendant back inside his pocket as a soft chime sounded at the door. "Come in," he said quietly. The door slid open, and Princess Urala stepped inside, her silver robe flowing behind her. She looked at him with calm determination. "I heard about the energy readings," she said. "My mother told me you ordered a lockdown." "I did," Ethan replied. "Just a precaution." She tilted her head. "Your precautions seem to come from experience, not fear." Ethan gave a faint smile. "Experience usually comes with both." She stepped closer, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Tell me about Halvoran." He froze. "Who told you about that?" "My mother," she said gently. "She said you carry a memory that guides every decision you make. If we are to trust each other, I must understand it." Ethan looked away. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then he walked to the observation window where the stars glittered like cold fire. "Halvoran was a colony on the edge of space," he began. "A mixed world, humans and 3 alien races. I was there as a peace officer. When the attack came, I had to make a choice. There was a human transport full of civilians, and an alien nursery deep underground. I could only save one." Urala's eyes widened. "And you chose?" "The nursery," he said quietly, "because the pirates planned to destroy it first. If I'd saved the transport, the nursery would have been wiped out in minutes. So I saved the infants. The human transport didn't make it." Urala's voice softened. "That must have been terrible." "It was worse afterward," Ethan said. "The aliens called me a hero, but the families of those humans called me a traitor. I couldn't look them in the eye. That's when I learned what peace really costs. It costs something from everyone involved, sometimes everything." Urala's voice was almost a whisper. "And that's why you avoid me?" He nodded slowly. "Because you remind me of the ones I couldn't save. Innocent, hopeful, and believing peace is simple. I can't let you think it's easy. It never is." Urala looked down, her hands trembling slightly. "You think I am naive." "I think you are good," Ethan said gently. "Too good for the kind of pain peace demands." She lifted her head. "You underestimate me, human." He smiled faintly. "Maybe, I hope I do." Meanwhile, deep in the Queen's chambers, Queen Azarinth sat before a shimmering holographic table. Around her stood her advisors, tall Vorlon nobles in ceremonial robes. The air felt heavy. One of the nobles, a thin alien with sharp eyes, spoke first. "Your Majesty, the human diplomat grows too influential. My spies report that even your daughter spends much time with him." The Queen raised an eyebrow. "You disapprove?" "I question his motives," the noble replied coldly. "Humans are clever. They speak of peace, but their history is full of war. Perhaps this Ethan Cole seeks to control the treaty, not protect it." The Queen's tone remained calm. "Do you have proof of this?" "Not yet," he admitted. "But our security found encrypted human transmissions directed toward the lower chambers. The same place where the energy disturbance occurred." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting sabotage?" "I suggest caution, my Queen," he said smoothly. "Sometimes those who carry guilt from the past repeat their mistakes." Azarinth waved her hand, dismissing him. "I will handle the human myself. Do not act without my command." As the nobles left, the Queen's expression hardened. She didn't fully trust Ethan, but she didn't doubt his sincerity either. There was something about the human that stirred both respect and unease. He was not like the others. Her gaze turned to the glowing symbols on her table, energy patterns similar to the ones Ethan had seen. She recognized them too. They were ancient Vorlon tech, something her own people had buried centuries ago. "Who would dare use this?" she whispered to herself. Later that night, Urala stood alone on the balcony of the royal quarters. The sky outside the station was filled with stars, and the light from GalacticPrime shimmered below. Her heart was heavy with what she had learned about Halvoran. She could still see the sadness in Ethan's eyes, the kind that came from choices no one should have to make. She heard footsteps behind her and turned. It was Terran, her friend and advisor. "You met the human again," he said softly. "Yes," she replied. He told me everything. Terran nodded slowly. Then you understand him better now? I understand his pain, she said. But I also see his strength. He carries it like a shield, not a weapon. Terran smiled faintly. That is what makes humans different, Princess. They do not seek perfection. They seek purpose, and sometimes purpose hurts. Urala looked toward the stars. He believes peace always costs something. I wonder if he's right. He is, Terran said. But he also forgets something. Peace is not only about cost. It is about choice. And he chose compassion. That makes him stronger than he knows. The next morning, the Queen summoned Ethan once again. When he entered the throne room, her expression was calm but unreadable. Ambassador Cole, she said, I have heard your story. I know now what you mean by the cost of peace. Ethan bowed slightly. Then you understand why I am cautious. I do, she said. But I also understand something else. You carry guilt that does not belong to you alone. Ethan looked up. Your Majesty? She stepped down from her throne and stood before him. You think you failed your people, but you forget. You saved lives. The universe remembers mercy more than pride. You speak of peace as if it is a wound, but perhaps peace is also healing. Her words struck him deeply. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he whispered, Maybe, but healing takes time. And trust, the Queen added. He nodded. Trust most of all. The Queen's gaze softened. Then trust me when I say this. Someone aboard this station wants our peace to fail. Those energy readings were not random. They were made by Vorlon hands, Ethan frowned. You suspect your own people? I suspect ambition, she said simply. The same ambition that almost destroyed both our species once before. Ethan took a deep breath. Then we stop it together. The Queen gave a slow nod. You and my daughter will investigate. She trusts you, and that is enough for me. Ethan blinked in surprise. Your Majesty, this could be dangerous. The Queen's voice was calm but firm. You said peace has a cost, human. Then pay it. Prove to me that your people's words are not empty. Ethan bowed. Then I will not fail. Later that day, Ethan met Urala in the docking bay. She wore light armor instead of royal robes. Her eyes gleamed with determination. My mother told me we're partners now, she said. Ethan nodded. Seems so. She smiled slightly. You said peace costs something. Let's see how much we're willing to pay. He smiled back. Let's. As they entered the shuttle together, the stars stretched before them. Somewhere out there, a hidden hand threatened the fragile peace between two civilizations. But now human and alien stood side by side, ready to face it together. And for the first time, Ethan felt that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't running anymore. The shuttle hummed quietly as it detached from the Unity Accord. Outside, Vorlon Prime glowed like a silver-blue jewel, its surface crisscrossed with cities and rivers of light. Inside, Ethan Cole and Princess Urala sat across from each other, the soft glow of the instrument panels reflecting in their eyes. This is the section where the energy pulses originated, Ethan said, pointing at the holographic map. Sensors show patterns consistent with deliberate interference, not a natural fault. Urala leaned closer. You think someone is trying to sabotage the peace talks? I don't think, Ethan replied firmly. I know, her eyes widened. Who, the Vorlon? Ethan shook his head. Not all. But there are factions, ambitious nobles who want to disrupt the treaty. They see human influence as a threat. They believe power is more important than peace. Urala's expression hardened. Then we stop them, Ethan nodded. Careful, though. They are clever. And desperate people are dangerous. The shuttle's landing gear touched the floor of the lower chamber smoothly. The walls glimmered with faint alien script, part of the station's hidden architecture. The corridor ahead was quiet, too quiet. Ethan and Urala moved cautiously. His eyes scanned every corner, his hand resting lightly near his side. Stay close, he whispered. These chambers were not meant for casual visitors. Some passages were sealed centuries ago to protect old Vorlon energy systems. Urala followed, silent but alert. She noticed the tension in Ethan's movements, the way he scanned shadows and listened for the smallest noise. His calmness was reassuring, but she also sensed the weight he carried, the same weight he had shown when telling her about Halvaron. Suddenly a soft hum filled the corridor. Lights flickered. Ethan froze. They know we are here, he whispered. We must be careful. Urala nodded, gripping her staff tightly. Together they turned a corner and entered a wider chamber. The source of the energy pulses was clear, a massive console glowing with alien light, wires spiraling out like veins. Panels of energy pulsed rhythmically, synchronized to the main station grid. Ethan stepped forward, examining the setup. His eyes narrowed. "This is not a system error," he said. "Someone is actively trying to manipulate the station's energy. If triggered during the summit, it could destabilize the entire station." Urala's silver eyes widened. "That could kill hundreds, maybe thousands of delegates." Ethan nodded grimly. "Exactly. That's why we cannot fail." As he began analyzing the panels, Urala noticed symbols on the console, ancient markings she had only seen in old royal archives. "These are Vorlon symbols," she said quietly. "Someone from our own kind is behind this." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I suspected as much. Ambition blinds people, and some will risk anything for power." Urala looked at him with determination. "Then we must act now. How do we stop it?" Ethan turned to her. "We need to stabilize the energy core manually. It will require precise timing and coordination. I'll guide the sequence, but I can't do it alone. I need you with me." She hesitated for a moment. "You said before, humans handle danger alone. Why this time?" He gave a faint, tired smile. "Because this is not just my fight. Peace belongs to everyone. And I trust you, Princess. That makes all the difference." Her expression softened and she stepped closer. "Then let's do it together." The energy core pulsed faster as they approached. Ethan began typing commands into the console, his fingers moving swiftly, guided by experience. Urala stood beside him, reading the sequences and monitoring the energy levels. Suddenly, a spark shot from one of the control panels, lighting the room in a brief, bright flare. Urala jumped back instinctively. "Careful!" Ethan kept his focus. "It's fine. The system is unstable, but not beyond control." He paused for a moment, glancing at her. "Stay ready. I may need you to adjust the stabilizers manually." She nodded, gripping the handles of the core. "I'm ready." Hours seemed to pass in tense silence. Outside, the station hummed, unaware of the crisis in the lower chambers. Ethan's brow furrowed as he worked through the sequences. Urala followed every instruction, her hands steady despite the growing pressure. Finally, the energy core's pulsing began to slow, stabilizing under their combined effort. Ethan exhaled sharply. Almost there. Just a few more adjustments, then the room shuddered. A hidden panel opened, revealing several nobles who had been watching them, ready to sabotage the operation themselves. They drew small energy devices, aiming at the human and princess. Urala's eyes widened. "Ethan, he didn't flinch. Keep your focus. I have a plan." With swift precision, Ethan activated the core's safety override, sending a pulse of controlled energy that short-circuited the nobles' devices. Sparks flew and the would-be saboteurs stumbled back, their plans ruined. Urala grinned. "You predicted that." Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "Not predicted, prepared. Humans learn from mistakes." One of the nobles shouted, rushing toward them, but Urala moved quickly, using her staff to block and redirect him. Together, they neutralized the threat without serious harm. The room fell silent, the energy core now stable and glowing steadily. Ethan's shoulders relaxed for the first time that day. "It's done," he said quietly. Urala looked at him with admiration. "You saved the peace, and maybe more than that." Ethan shook his head. "I didn't do it alone. You were the difference." She smiled softly, and for a moment the distance between them seemed smaller. She finally understood why he had avoided her. It wasn't fear or disdain. It was responsibility. He carried the weight of humanity's choices, and he didn't want anyone to bear that burden with him unless they were ready. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I understand now. You carry the cost of peace not as punishment but as strength." He looked at her, his eyes calm but tired. "It is strength only if it teaches you what is worth protecting. And you proved you can stand beside it, not behind it." Later, in the royal observation room, the Queen and her advisors watched the events through distant cameras. "Remarkable," said the Queen softly. Her silver eyes focused on the two figures working in perfect coordination. "The human and my daughter together. They embody what peace truly means." One of her advisors frowned. "Your Majesty, if they fail—" "They will not fail," the Queen interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "Humans carry a fire in them. It burns through doubt, fear, and hesitation. It is why they endure. They are not perfect, but they try. And trying. That is strength. She looked at her daughter, still glowing from the energy core chamber. Urala, you have seen it yourself. Humans are not just clever. They are willing to sacrifice. They are willing to carry pain for the sake of others. That is why your father and I chose to engage with them in the first place. Urala nodded slowly. I understand now, Mother. I understand why he avoided me before. He is protecting more than himself. The Queen smiled faintly, and in doing so he shows us what is truly valuable. Courage without violence, sacrifice without reward, and trust earned, not demanded. That is the human way. Back in the lower chambers, Ethan and Urala returned to the shuttle, exhausted but alive. The station hummed around them, unaware of the danger that had just passed. Ethan exhaled, a rare smile tugging at his lips. Well, that could have gone worse. Urala laughed softly. You mean it could have been impossible? He shook his head. Impossible is just another challenge. Humans love challenges. That's why we survive where others might not. She looked at him with admiration. You make it sound so simple. Ethan's eyes softened. It's not simple. It's necessary. And sometimes necessary things demand more than courage. They demand understanding. That is what humans bring to the galaxy. Urala smiled, her respect for him deepening. She realized finally why the human had avoided her at first. Not because he disliked her, not because he feared her. He avoided her because he understood the weight of responsibility, and he wanted her to understand it too, before stepping into it herself. As the shuttle lifted toward the main station, stars streaking past the windows, Ethan felt something he had not felt in years, a sense of quiet satisfaction. Not triumph, not relief, but hope. Hope that the cost of peace could be borne, if only humans and allies like Urala were willing to carry it together. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew the next challenge would come soon. But for now, humanity had proven itself once more, not through strength alone, but through the courage to care. The shuttle glided smoothly through the upper corridors of the Unity Accord. Ethan Cole sat silently, staring at the stars outside the viewport. Beside him, Princess Urala remained quiet, her silver eyes reflecting the glowing planet below. Neither spoke for a while. The events of the past hours weighed heavily on them both. Sabotage, confrontation, and survival had tested their limits, and yet they had succeeded. Peace had been preserved, if only for now. Finally, Urala broke the silence. Ethan, why do humans endure so much? So much fear, so much responsibility, yet you still rise again. Ethan smiled faintly, though the weariness never left his eyes. Because we have to, he said simply. If humans stop trying when the cost is high, nothing would last. Our strength isn't in ignoring danger, it's in facing it. Even when we fail, we try again, and that is what makes us human. Urala considered his words. I think I understand now. You avoided me before not because you didn't care, but because you wanted me to see the weight of your choices, to see the cost of peace before I ever stepped into it. Ethan nodded. Exactly. You cannot walk into a world that demands responsibility without knowing what it feels like to bear it. Her gaze softened. Then, thank you for trusting me enough to let me see it. Meanwhile, in the Queen's chamber, Queen Azarinth sat quietly, reviewing the reports from her surveillance teams. The energy disturbances were contained, the saboteurs exposed, and the station's peace ensured. She leaned back, her hands folded in her lap. Her silver eyes were thoughtful. So the human and my daughter worked together, and succeeded. One of her advisors, still cautious, spoke. Your Majesty, we cannot ignore the influence he now holds. Humans are clever and their methods are unlike ours. Some fear they may be, too, independent. The Queen turned to him slowly. Clever, yes, independent? Certainly. But that is why they survive. They are not bound by tradition alone. They weigh choices, endure losses, and act because it is necessary, not because it is demanded. Another advisor raised a question. Your Majesty, is that wisdom or recklessness? The Queen smiled faintly. It is both, and that is why humanity has a place among the stars. We learn from their courage and they learn from our guidance. It is a partnership, not dominance. She rose from her throne and looked out of the window at the glowing planet. My daughter sees it now. The human ambassador does not avoid responsibility, nor fear it. He bears it. That is what I wanted my daughter to understand. That is what we all must understand. Back in the shuttle, Yarala reached out and touched Ethan's arm lightly. You know, I think your people are ready for more than diplomacy, she said softly. He looked at her curiously. More than diplomacy? Yes, she replied. You showed me that humanity's strength lies not just in weapons, speed, or technology. It lies in your choices, your compassion, and your courage. That is something even the strongest alien empires struggle to achieve. Ethan allowed a small, rare smile. You make it sound like a lesson instead of the truth. It is the truth, she said firmly. And now I believe more than ever that humans deserve a place among the stars, not just as allies but as leaders of moral courage. Ethan looked at her, seeing in her eyes a reflection of his own hope. For the first time, he felt that perhaps the future could be different. Perhaps peace could last longer than a fragile moment. The shuttle returned to the main station. As they entered the central hall, other diplomats noticed the human and the princess walking side by side. A soft murmur spread through the crowd. Stories of their bravery had already circulated. Tales of a human who faced sabotage, danger, and the weight of history, yet remained calm, composed, and uncompromising in his moral courage. The queen appeared at the top of the central staircase, her presence commanding silence. Citizens of the station, she said, her voice strong and clear. Peace has been preserved today not through fear, not through coercion, but through courage and understanding. One human and one princess worked together to protect all our peoples. All eyes turned toward Ethan and Yarala. The queen's gaze softened as she continued. This is the example of what is possible when species unite not for power, but for trust and moral responsibility. Let it be remembered that courage is not measured by force alone, but by the willingness to act rightly, even when the cost is high. A ripple of awe ran through the hall. Humans and aliens alike felt the weight of her words. For the first time, many understood that humanity's strength was not merely physical or technological. It was ethical, moral, and enduring. Later, in a quiet corridor, Yarala turned to Ethan. I think I understand why you avoided me before. It wasn't distance. It was teaching. Ethan shook his head slightly. Not teaching, protecting. You had to face the truth yourself. What it means to carry responsibility. That is something every diplomat, every leader must know. Yarala's silver eyes glimmered. And yet you shared it with me anyway. You trusted me to understand, he nodded. Because you are capable. Because you care. Because courage is meaningless unless it is shared. For the first time, she felt the distance between them dissolve. She realized he had been human in every sense. Not perfect, not fearless, but endlessly persistent. Endlessly willing to do what was right even when it hurt. The days that followed the sabotage attempt were tense but hopeful. Security measures increased, but the station remained functional. The peace summit continued without further incidents. Ethan and Yarala were called upon repeatedly to advise both human and Vorlon delegations. And in every discussion, their calm professionalism and shared experience inspired trust. One evening, as the station's artificial sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan and Yarala walked through the gardens together. The glowing trees swayed gently, reflecting the soft light of the station. You've changed my perspective, Yarala said quietly. I used to think humans were reckless, fragile, and unpredictable. Now I see. We are the fragile ones. You endure in ways we cannot imagine. Ethan glanced at her. Enduring doesn't make us perfect. It just makes us try harder, and sometimes that's enough to make a difference. She nodded, her expression thoughtful. Then maybe humanity isn't just ready for peace. Humanity is ready to lead by example. He smiled faintly. Perhaps. But leadership is not about power. It's about responsibility, and that is something we all learn together. At the summit's conclusion, the Queen stood beside the human ambassador and her daughter as the treaties were signed. Delegates from dozens of species witnessed the moment. The formal documents were important, yes, but the unspoken understanding between human and alien was far more profound. The Queen spoke again, her voice carrying authority and warmth. Let this be remembered. Courage, compassion, and moral responsibility are what allow peace to flourish. We honor those who act not out of fear, not out of desire for control, but because it is right. Today, humanity has shown us what that truly means. A soft applause filled the hall, echoing across the stations and cities. Human and Vorlon eyes alike reflected pride, admiration, and hope. Ethan and Urala exchanged a quiet glance. No words were necessary. They had faced danger, carried the weight of the past, and emerged stronger. They had learned that courage is measured not by victories alone but by the willingness to act rightly, even when everything else is uncertain. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, Ethan held the small pendant from Halvaran in his hand. He looked at it thoughtfully, remembering the cost of peace, the weight of past choices, and the trust he had earned from allies and even the princess. He whispered softly, "We did it. We preserved what matters, together." Urala entered quietly. "You didn't do it alone," she said. "You reminded me what courage really is." "That is the greatest gift a human can give." Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "Then I suppose humanity has finally earned a place among the stars, not because of strength alone, but because we try to do what is right." She nodded, a gentle smile on her face. "And I am glad to have witnessed it." Outside the window, Vorlon Prime glowed like a beacon in the dark expanse of space. Stars stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to a small but meaningful victory. The universe had not changed, but the hearts of those who would shape its future had. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt hope, a fragile, bright hope that peace could last, that humanity's courage could inspire others, and that even across species, understanding, trust, and moral strength could shine brighter than any weapon or strategy. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had shown the galaxy its greatest power, not domination, not cunning, not technology, but heart, courage, and the will to do what is right even when the cost is high.